Hogan has revealed that she told then COSATU Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi about what was happening around the appointment of a new Transnet CEO. Hogan was testifying at the Zondo Commission, explaining how former President Jacob Zuma and others interfered with the process of hiring a Transnet CEO. Now, the ANC's Zizi Kodwa yesterday dismissing Hogan's allegations, saying it was hogwash. Zwelinzima Vavi, who is now COSATU Secretary General, joins us. Mr. Vavi, part of the reason why we're having this conversation is, of course, beyond the work that the Zondo Commission has to do. I think that there needs to be true reflection as a country in terms of how this party-state relationship, which seems to be very murky at best of times, is navigated as we go forward. Barbara Hogan's testimony has been refuted by the ANC and also by some of those that were mentioned in it. In reference to COSATU, she specifically said that when she was under pressure around the appointment of Siyabonga Gama, she called on, there was the Tripartite Alliance, there was the SACP, there was the ANC Youth League, who publicly were against her in terms of Gama's appointment, the fact that she was refusing to appoint him. COSATU was also one of those that launched a public campaign of sorts, and after meeting with her, you then changed your mind. Perhaps tell us a bit about what that meeting with her was.
Well, we didn't have to change our mind, if that was the statement. We didn't change our mind.
Or perhaps let's listen to what she said and then we'll come back to it.
COSATU will ensure that no puppet appointment takes place until the disciplinary process of Gama is completed, even though at the cost of keeping the untransformed cabal in place a little longer. That is the tone of it. Might I just say that COSATU as a federation never once engaged publicly on this matter. I had briefed Zwelinzima Vavi, and he concurred with me that this issue was problematic. So although the Transport Union, who, have members in Transnet, issued a statement, COSATU was the one part of the Tripartite Alliance that did not follow suit as the others had done.
All right, and thanks for that clarity in her own words there. So tell us about the meeting that you had with Barbara Hogan and what issues she had raised with you.
Well, I can't remember the specific times and time frames. Look, this is now some good 8 years ago we're talking about. But yes, she did talk to me as the General Secretary about the going-ons in Transnet. We have also been issuing statements at the public at the time when there were allegations that he was not acting, he was the CEO of the Road Freight Agency, which is a subsidiary or a component of Transnet. That's now Mr. Gama, that he had awarded the minister at the time, Sipuenyanda, a 55 million tender, controversially. And we had spoken out against this. We had asked for the board to investigate these allegations and, if proven correct, to take disciplinary action against Mr. Gama. So it was therefore logical that we would not be able to, from that point of view, back him as the CEO or agree that the appointment of the CEO be suspended over somebody who clearly had some things to answer over the allegations that were coming out in public.
How did you read what Barbara Hogan was telling you, especially from the perspective of the fact that in the first instance, it was the former president who was putting her under pressure for these appointments. But then as time moved on, he seemed to enjoy also at least some of the support of the collective and almost isolating her in that environment.
You have to read it in the context of the political environment that prevailed at that time. COSATU was a big supporter of the president. In 2005, when he was being dismissed as a deputy president, in Polokwane, when he was elected the president of the ANC, and would have worked very hard to ensure that the ANC retains its majority, even under the threat of losing support as a result of the COPE split. And so that's the context politically up to 2009. We would have been absolutely excited that we said decent work is on the agenda and the ANC is back in the hands of its members. We were in a celebratory mood. But by 2010 already, concerns were beginning to be raised inside COSATU. And I was one of those who was now beginning to ask serious questions as to whether our choices, both in 2005, 2007, 2008, 2009, was correct, now based on what we were getting. And,
but at what point does the issue of this interference become something that is spoken about within the quarters of the tripartite alliance?
It was not in the tripartite alliance, but there was definitely uncomfortabilities growing inside COSATU. I remember this very well, because this was a subject of a discussion as to where are we going. I remember that we actually penned a paper which anybody can go back to. When in August, October 2010, we wrote a paper that said...
Are you saying that the broader collective, I mean, this is notwithstanding that eventually we do have the likes of the SACP who would have called for, former President Jacob Zuma to step down. But up until those moments, are you saying that there was never really conversations, despite the fact that people like Barbara Hogan, at least on her version, had pointed to issues of interference, that this really it wasn't talked about at all?
Not in the tripartite alliance, and there was at that time in the alliance, the SACP and the ANC, I don't know what they're going to say in the Zondo Commission, the SACP and the ANC at that time were absolutely 110% behind President Jacob Zuma, despite us in COSATU growing uncomfortabilities. And let me explain this. So in October, we write a paper to say this alliance is at crossroads. There's a growing phenomenon of what we call tenderpreneurship, in particular in the ANC Youth League, and that there was policy zigzags that were taking us nowhere in terms of the policy level, and we were growing concerned. COSATU major affiliates would have been warned later in 2011 into the agenda of uncritical support for Jacob Zuma, and therefore the emergence of an implosion would have started by 2011 in the run-up to the 2012 Congress of COSATU, where clearly those of us who were beginning to ask serious questions about the direction of the country under President Jacob Zuma were being now subjected to isolation, attack, ridicule, and security threats and all manner of things that were happening at that time. And so the rest is history. But so Barbara was very brave. We know her. We may have not agreed with her at the policy level, and that still remained the case. She's very conservative and economically thinking, and that was sitting at odds with what we wanted the state-owned enterprises to do in terms of the role they should play in the developmental agenda of South Africa. We disagreed, and I still disagree with her in relation to that. But when it comes to being forthrightly opposed to looting and corruption, I supported her 100%. So when she came to us to say there's a problem here. We said, no, we know it already because it is in the newspapers.
Mr. Vavi, we don't have time for me to play back what Zizi Kodwa told us yesterday. He's saying that the ANC in no way interferes with the appointment of people in the state, whether it's SOEs, whether it's boards, that they simply do not get involved. And it was the first time that he was hearing of such allegations, and that Barbara Hogan needed to take it to Luthuli House officially. Is he telling the truth?
That's not the truth. My own experience as a member of that alliance was that there was a deployment committee, which COSATU was always trying to form part of. And that deployment committee would have been consulted on every major appointment, or would have initiated itself every major appointment by the state. Yes, initiated in the party, and eventually president okay, the minister okay, the cabinet okay, and the appointment is done. That's how it works. And I wouldn't understand why anybody will pick up an issue around that issue, because society knows that anybody who would have played a role in the Tripartite Alliance in those days know exactly that's how this thing is done.
All right. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But thank you so much for coming to share at least your side of the story.